lots and lots of money was made off of the negative side of mentalism or magic.
You can see it very clearly, like we're being manipulated.
Any scam is using the same basic techniques that I use in my show.
More in the past, mentalism and this idea of telepathy or ESP was kind of used as a con.
You see it in advertisement all the time.
I've done consulting before with medical groups, with doctors. Now, with social media, I can scam 1 million people.
I already see nefarious ways that mentalism and the subconscious are being tapped into by TV, government, sales pitches. It's sleight of hand. You're playing on the mind. And then it started turning into people preying on people.
Mentalism is the art of thought reading and the art of people reading.
There's a huge debate in the magic and especially in the mentalist community about the ethics behind both exposure and what powers to claim.
And I realized the only way to survive in life is to understand what people are thinking.
The propaganda that is in movies today and the propaganda that's in television, and they're using a lot of the techniques for the wrong reasons.
And then it became its own art form where we actually focus on what's really happening, the psychology behind it, but actually get into what it is, which is playing with people's minds by using actual science.
James Knight, let's go! Yeah, thank you! Oh, what a great crowd tonight. I am James Knight. I'm a thought influencer, body language expert. Some people have accused me of being a mind reader. So let's read some minds tonight. Thank you!
Mentalism is like your brain's magician, except instead of pulling rabbits out of hats, it's pulling your thoughts out of thin air. It's all about heightened perception, psychological wizardry, and a splash of theatrical flair.
We're gonna have some fun tonight. A lot of the other performers here will do amazing sleight of hand and illusions. I don't do any of that stuff. Instead, I'm gonna play with your minds.
I want to be hesitant of using the word thought reading or mind reading for everything, because there's a lot of things in mentalism that don't exactly fall under that guideline. A good portion of it is, and when you think of a mentalist, the first thing you think of is thought reading, being able to look at someone and tell them about themselves or tell them about what they're thinking or what they chose or decisions they're about to make. But there's also different areas of mentalism.
You guys having a good time so far?
The principles of mentalism is gaining the information or presenting the information.
Mentalism works because humans are basically open books with terrible security systems. Mentalists read your body language, pick up on your micro reactions, and use psychological hacks like suggestion to nudge you in the direction they want.
So mentalism is a fairly new art where we actually focus on what's really happening, the psychology behind it, not pretending that we're talking to spirits, not pretending that there's any sort of higher power behind it, but actually get into what it is, which is playing with people's minds by using actual science.
I've been studying mind reading for years. Ever since way back when I was in college, I was having some serious relationship issues. Shocking, I know. And I realized the only way to survive in life is to understand what people are thinking.
Lots of different mentalisms do things different ways. The way you speak, your tones, as simple as we have A, B, and C. And in a moment you're gonna pick one. You're gonna pick A, B, or C. And just simple, inflections in your tone can trigger someone to lean towards.
Here's the deal. A mentalist asks you to think of a simple shape. Let's say that you pick a triangle, then bam, they guess it. What sorcery is this? None, actually. They probably gave you subtle cues, like drawing triangles in the air, or tossing out words like sharp or point. When asked this question, most people will pick a triangle or a square because, hey, humans love to keep it basic. That's mentalism. Part psychology, part probability, and 100% making you question your life choices.
Something that I do is something called psychometry. And the idea being people would place objects that they hold inside of bags. Those bags are collected and mixed, so we don't know what object belongs to which person. My job would be then to take the object from the bag, oftentimes blindfolded, without being able to see it, reveal what the object is and describe the person whom it belongs to, and returning it that way. So in that case, there's no mind being read, per se. It's simply coming from the person. So things like that, or predictions, things and decisions that people are going to make even before writing things in envelopes or putting predictions in boxes, and then having a series of events take place that you have then foreseen ahead of time.
Now, one of the great things about mentalism, and especially free choice scenarios, is, at least for me, I think they hit harder because there is actually room for error. When I have you make a choice, I don't know what you're gonna choose. You're gonna do a much better show if you hit 80% versus 100% of your feats. Because now people are thinking like, oh, well, he is human. He can be flawed. Versus a card magician who's doing all the things in your face, perfect. You know he's gonna get your card and do something with it, but the magic hits harder when you close that gap or make the participant and the magician more relatable and more human. We always see people on stage and we inherently, without even thinking, they're not the normal human, right? They're this much bigger person, much bigger atmosphere. There's a celebrity. Well, same thing when you step onto the stage. Like, even if we're trying to be relatable with someone, we're seen in a different light. We're held to a higher standard. So when you can bridge that, the magic you're doing hits way harder.
Mentalism gets confused with mind reading all the time, but let's set the record straight. No one is walking around here with Professor X's mental powers. Mentalists are just really good at playing detective, reading body language, analyzing speech patterns, and using psychology to make it look like they're inside your head. It's not mystical. It's just people science turned up to 11. That said, if someone offers to guess your ATM pin, maybe don't engage.
Well, there's a huge debate in the magic and especially in the mentalist community about the ethics behind both exposure and what powers to claim. And there's no one opinion on that.
So you look like the most honest person in here? That's not saying much. There you go.
There's some people that like to go through and expose the actual psychics, or those claiming to have psychic powers, and say, no, this is for entertainment. If you are claiming that you're contacting the dead, that is trickery. We can explain how this works. If there are people actually claiming psychic powers, they'll go through and say, actually, it's not. I can show you how this magic is done. There are others that just claim the powers and go with it. And there's others that do it more in a entertainment setting. For example, when I'm at the Magic Castle doing a show, I don't feel the need to have any sort of disclaimer explaining that there's psychology behind this or there's trickery, because I think it's obvious because I'm in a big stage with lights and everyone got dressed up to come get a drink and watch a show. I think it's pretty obvious based on the setting. But that would be different than if I had just a room where I invited people in to give them readings about their past lives, their future, and what their dead relatives think. So ethically, I draw a distinction there.
It's portraying or essentially you're telling someone that you have this innate ability to capture an image or look into the future or past telepathically, right? Without any other means. You're showing a sixth sense, if you will. Predictions, some would call it chance or fate.
The name of your childhood kiss. You wrote down Michelle? Let me show you what I wrote down.
Mentalism is a double-edged sword. On one side, it's a fun party trick. On the other, it's a tool for world-class manipulation. The same skills that can dazzle a crowd can also con someone out of their life savings. Picture a scammer using mentalism to gain your trust, influence your decisions, or walk away with your bank details. Fun, right?
A lot of magic, as we see it, started out as a con. Whether it be sleight of hand, right? We always make a joke, but you're not a true magician unless you can perform the cups and balls. The most oldest sleight of hand. And I do a cup and ball routine, chop cup routine, but it's legitimate premise of it's one of the oldest tricks in magic. It's been found in hieroglyphs in ancient Egypt. It's sleight of hand. You're playing on the mind. And then it started turning into people preying on people. So one of the older forms of mentalism we see is in the spiritual realm, seances.
Yeah, I mean, it gets back to, when you go and see a tarot card reader. I love doing tarot. I love the intuition that tarot gives. It's a great experience. I'm always surprised at how accurate the tarot is. But when you're charging people large amounts of money for it and are really acting as their doctor, their lawyer, their priest, their all these roles that they really shouldn't be fulfilling, that to me is manipulation. And then I see it in sales. I see it in a lot of the commercials that are on TV and advertising, especially. A very subliminal, the way things are put together make you can see it very clearly, like we're being manipulated by this speech, or we're being manipulated by this movies, and the propaganda that is in movies today, and the propaganda that's in television and Hollywood in itself. It's pretty clear to me that they're using a lot of the techniques for the wrong reasons.
And that was one of actually Houdini's big things, debunking people. He didn't like it. He was an entertainer. He knew it was for entertainment purposes and started seeing things going sour. You see these people prey on someone who just lost their loved one. Hey, you didn't get to say something to them. I tell you what, for this price, get 10 of your friends to have them all chip in, and we'll meet up, and I'll communicate for you with them. Now, can that be done? Is some of that real? That's where the magic part meets reality, and I don't know, I couldn't tell you 100%. I'm not a not believer in the other side. I believe there's something out there. I believe there's a veil over our current state. So unfortunately, a lot of times the people we see that do that stuff, even currently, there's plenty out there, are trying to profit, right? But back in the day, I think it was, I'll have to double check, but the Fox sisters, I believe it was, did seances. And they did magic, but it was trick magic. They'd have a group in there, they'd contact the other side, they'd pull out ectoplasm, which was cheesecloth that they swallowed earlier, tied to a string. They shook the table, made things move.
I've had issues where people would see my show and then come to me and ask me to contact a deceased relative to come cleanse their house of any demons. I had someone who was hearing voices, and he wanted me to try and talk to the voices since I could get inside people's minds. So in situations like that, I'll say, no, actually, you need serious medical help. This is entertainment. But not every performer draws the same distinction.
Yeah, lots and lots of money was made off of the negative side of mentalism or magic. So, and that's where a lot of the negative connotations of magic come from, because it was a scam.
Any scam is using the same basic techniques that I use in my show and legitimate advertisers and marketers use to try and influence people. It can be harnessed for all sorts of things.
Mentalism is super cool, until it's not. Here's 5 techniques that they can use. Cold reading. Sometimes fake psychics can use vague guesses to make you spill your secrets. Spoiler, they're just really good at fishing. Free choice manipulation, convincing you it's your choice while nudging you towards theirs. Prediction hoaxes, pre-planning outcomes and pretending that they predicted it. Magic? No. Cheat sheet? Yeah. Mind reading scams, asking leading questions to read your mind. It's basically an interrogation with jazz hands. Barnum statements, universally vague phrases like, you care deeply, but you wish others noticed more.
So pyramid schemes, when I get calls from random telemarketers that are clearly not from reputable companies, they're all using the same basic things. I have a script in my show to try and give people that experience, to make it feel like I can really read them and that I can control their choices. When a telemarketer calls me and follows a script, they're following that script because they have found that by harnessing psychology in a certain way, they can push people to make the choices they want.
In some cases, there can be a gentle guiding in order to get to a common enough spot to where you kind of give the illusion of free choice in order to get them to a given outcome. So if I say, think of any letter in the alphabet, well, that's a 1 in 26 choice. So already from the universe, I've narrowed it down to 26 things. So I can already work with that. Engaging upon your reaction to things, I can start to make educated guesses. One of the things that I find interesting is people going, well, I'm going to try and catch you. I'm going to try and trick you here. No one's ever going to think of this, which is lovely, but that oftentimes makes it easier. Because if I were to say a number or a letter from 1 to 26, and you were to go, okay, all right, I got it. That is a genuine, you have a 1 in 26 shot. From that, I know you're genuinely looking at the alphabet and going, I like this one, and making a genuine choice. And then I would use various techniques in order to find out what that is. But if in that moment I say, think of any letter in the alphabet, and they go, all right, got it. And they have this kind of air of like, there's no way you're gonna get this. They're likely thinking of Y, Q, or Z. Because those letters in the English alphabet, in the English language, don't appear as frequently as, say, something like A, E, I, O, or U, to them seems like no one ever picks this, you're never gonna get it. But because I know that, that thus makes it easier. Because now, unknowingly to you, you've now narrowed your choices from everything down to these things that people are most likely to go for. And equally, you can start to leave breadcrumbs for yourself and start to unpack things that people are going about.
We're always being influenced. The only way we know anything about the world is based on what other people tell us. We either experience things ourselves. We can experience basic things. I know gravity exists because I can feel it. I understand the laws of physics because I live them every day. There's things I can see, but I don't travel to most parts of this world. I will never meet most people on Earth. So all I know about anything that I cannot physically experience myself comes through other people, through media, through what I find on the internet. So we are definitely influenced. I just talk to people about what they think about politics, what they think about other countries they've never been to, what they think about historical events, anything in outer space, anything scientific they don't understand. All that stuff has to come from other people. And by other people, it could be those that they actually have face-to-face experiences with. But oftentimes it's what they see on TikTok, what they see on Facebook, what they see on Twitter, or what they see on the news media. So all of that definitely influences us.
Imagine this. You get a call. Hi, it's your bank. We noticed some suspicious activity. Sounds legit, right? Then they hit you with a vague Barnum statement like, you made a lot of transactions recently, haven't you? Before you know it, they've cold read you into giving up your account details. It's not magic, it's manipulation. And then you're on hold with fraud prevention.
So absolutely, this can be used for good or bad. I try to help people and I try to do my consulting and my training with companies that are gonna use this positively, but it can definitely be misused.
The ability to understand that of people and kind of suggest these things and whatnot is prevalent constantly and all throughout the day. How often do we wander about going, why is there a song stuck in my head? Probably because we wandered about when we were picking up Starbucks, not even thinking about it, and that song was playing in the background, and thus it kind of creeps up on us. So we can leave these little hints and subtle suggestions as we go about our day in order to give ideas or thoughts and things that kind of influence people, whether that be just in general advertising, just having things pop up.
We have much more mass media, much more social media. So it used to be, if you were trying to scam people, you could scam 2 or 3 people. You could maybe get to a dozen people around you. Now, with social media, I can scam 1 million people. I can get my message out immediately. With text messaging, with calls, you can easily get this out to the masses in no time at all, which definitely makes it dangerous and makes it much more important that we look at the ethical implications.
I've heard of like guerrilla marketing techniques, which very much parallel or seem like magic tricks in a lot of ways, to where they would say promoting an app would have, on college campuses, they would have a person wearing that logo on their t-shirt accidentally wander into a class and make a big fuss of it, walk into the front and go, sorry, is this economics 1.0? No, I'm sorry, everybody. And then leave, but everyone now saw this for just a split second, now saw this logo. And then later on, there's a familiarity to that later on, if I were to see it pop up in an ad on Instagram or whatnot, there's a familiarity to it. There's a natural element to that.
The power of influence is a very common thing to explore in mentalism. Can you really push people to do one thing or another? And we use a lot of the same techniques that they'll use in marketing, advertising, politics, religion, where you're using subtle cues, you're using psychology, you're using false dilemmas, you're using trickery of some sort.
A wonderful thing that I think mentalists use, and I think is used pretty widely, is something called priming. And the best way that I can explain priming is through a joke. What mouse walks on 2 legs? Think for a moment, it's Mickey Mouse. And I would say, what dog walks on 2 legs? Well, it's Goofy. And I would say, what duck walks on 2 legs? And most people would say, Donald Duck. Well, the answer is every duck. Ducks only have 2 legs. So, but the reason that we are primed that the third answer would be a Disney character is because the first 2 were pattern-seeking beings. So understanding that, if I were to lay out something ahead of time, whether it be verbally or non-verbally, I could get you to do something that I need you to do. Even in the context of, say, a magic trick, there's non-verbal priming that you can do. One of the first things I learned doing magic or whatnot was actually doing it for children, is how do you get them to follow instructions? So say, for example, I want to show a green ball, put it in their hand, click my fingers, and now it's 2. Very straightforward, very fun, magical thing. Well, if you've ever been around children or have children of your own, it's hard to give kids instructions, especially when they're 4, 5, or 6, because they want to touch it, they want to look at it. No, it's fuzzy, and that might mess up the trick. So how do you get them to do that? A little bit of psychology goes a long way. So something that I would do, and I would demonstrate it for them. So I would say, whatever the child I'm going to give the ball to, I'd say, hold your hand flat like a table. I say like a table, so that way they understand a reference, and I do this. So even if they're not listening to anything I'm saying, it's Simon Says now. Just go like this, and they do that, and I go, great. And I've also found if I adjust their hand just slightly, they'll stay there. And then I could walk away for 10 minutes and come back and you're still doing this, because I've now dubbed this non-verbally that this is important. So I'd say, hold your hand out flat, adjust it, and it would stay there. And in the context of doing this with a ball, I need them to close their hand and keep it closed to do something sneaky. I can then take the ball with no resistance whatsoever, place it in their hand, they will immediately snatch it. And equally, if I say, don't let me steal it, I'm gonna make it disappear in your hand, or whatever the case may be, they're now not gonna open their hand. So from what was once a very problematic thing of going, how do you get people who are distracted, or even young people, to just follow a simple instruction like that that's mission critical? That is, if they go, whoa, it might mess up a trick, or they might see something, it might spoil the illusion. So how do you do that? A little bit of psychology goes a long way to kind of preemptively give them an importance of what's going on, feeding them a narrative to where now I don't want to open my hand because of X, Y, and Z, as opposed to please, please, please just do this for me.
When you're walking down the street or driving down the freeway and you see a sign for something, they don't have your undivided attention. It's very possible you could just ignore it. And you might have to see the same sign 1,000 times before you buy something. For me, I control the setting. I control where people are waiting in line, how they come into the room, what the audio, video, lighting is like, what they experience, what I say, the props. By controlling all that, that gives me every possible advantage to really influence people and control their choices. So hopefully I get a much better accuracy rating than any of these marketing or advertising agencies do. But it's a very controlled environment that probably doesn't apply in everyday life.
Unfortunately, I for sure see it in the grand scheme of things being used in nefarious ways. Everything we do and watch and see on TV, unfortunately, is they have to play the psychological game to get more clicks and likes and get more views, even to the extent of almost like the seeding of thoughts, right?
Seeding thoughts is basically inception for the real world. A mentalist plants an idea in your brain without you noticing, like saying, picture something calming, like the ocean or sky, and boom, you're thinking of blue. And then somewhere down the line, they're gonna ask you to think of a color. It's subtle, sneaky, and makes you question how many of your ideas are actually yours.
What's funny is, so a prime example would be Tom DeLonge. He created this fiction-based book company with the premise being they're gonna take information that he's gathered from his friends in or around the government, put them into stories, and start seeding the planet with these stories. So that way when technologies and stuff come out, it's not a huge shock. We already had some thought or idea. So he's brought up that he thinks a lot of what we see in science fiction movies is stuff that we've either already adapted or developed, and they're just trying to make it less of a shock when this stuff comes out.
Every day, just like everyone else, I am inundated with all sorts of phone calls from random telemarketers, from random people. I get text messages every day from people pretending they're my friend to try and sell me cryptocurrency. I get so many of these types of things that I actually enjoy it because I like listening to what they have to say, seeing how they structure it, because it's a game. I like to see how this stuff works. And I can see a lot of parallels to what I do in my shows to what they're doing. So it's really intriguing to try and tear that apart. And just from my studies, I like to study this stuff and see, how did this work?
I had a little bit of practice in sales throughout my life. I worked in radio, doing radio sales and advertising sales, and worked for some major companies out there, some really big companies, some telecommunication companies that put us through training and sales training, and a lot of that had to do with mentalism, and a lot of mentalism techniques are the same things that salespeople are using. So when I see a salesperson, dream building and, really, can you picture yourself in this, and really getting someone on that roller coaster ride of emotions, they're manipulating you, but that's kind of the evil side of it, I think, and they're using it for their own personal gain rather than just for entertainment purposes. But yeah, I definitely see salespeople do it all the time. And I see really good, effective communicators and politicians doing that, whether they know that they're doing it on purpose or whether it's just something that naturally comes to them. I think it's a combination of both. But some of the best speakers and people that you're listening to in politics are 100% using those same techniques.
Knowledge is the key. The more you learn about things, the better it works. I would say just study things, study logical fallacies, study marketing, study advertising, look at media literacy. The problem we have right now is that so much of what you see is photoshopped, it's created with AI, it's not from reputable sources. And so many people could benefit by just learning about media literacy. If you find something that seems too good to be true, question it, look at it. Now, this could just be because you already agree with it. If it's politics, well, I like this candidate, I like this party, or I hate this candidate or party, and I just found something that tells me exactly what I already think. There's a good chance if it fits exactly with what you think, it's not reputable or it's not real. If it seems too extreme, that fits just too perfectly into what you already think, there might be an issue. If you are desperate for a job, you're broke, you need money, if you then find someone that's going to give you a lot of money in some sort of scam, you might want to question what's going on. If you see an image that, wow, that just seems too amazing to be real, there's a good chance it's not real. Or if you're having any health issues and you find, well, this is a cure that my doctor doesn't know about, that's amazing. Well, if your doctor doesn't know about it or doesn't want you to know about it, it's probably not real. That's probably why it is. So just studying, just learning about media literacy, learning about logical fallacies, and since I teach in a college, taking a class on this stuff, taking a class in argumentation, on media, on persuasion is just invaluable.
I will tell you again, and this may piss off other mentalists that are in this documentary, but it's acting. Again, like what I said at the beginning, magic is simply storytelling. You have psychological forces. You see it in advertisement all the time. The reason why a particular fast food chain uses red and yellow as their primary colors. Yellow makes you happy, and red makes you want to go fast. So red and yellow make you want to get out. You're happy to be there, but you want to go. There are always psychological things. I mean, it's so bonkers now with, like, you and I could be having a conversation about neither of us could have any plans or have any children, and yet we're talking about children's toys. All of a sudden I'll open Facebook and go, Toys R Us is having a sale. I don't know how, I don't know why, I don't want to know why. That's scary. But that idea of influencing you, that idea of being able to use verbiage, imagery, soundscape, all of that to influence you. I mean, you look at, one of the things I do a lot is I perform in a lot of theme parks. And at those parks, when you're walking down Main Street USA in Disneyland, they're pumping out the scent of vanilla from the candy store. You're not actually smelling the candy. You're smelling what we want you to smell, or what they want you to smell, what Mickey wants you to smell. And it's not as cheese.
Mentalists love to debunk frauds because, let's face it, nobody likes a scammer. Fake psychics and mediums use mentalism's techniques to exploit people, and real mentalists hate that. Exposing these con artists isn't ruining the magic, it's putting the magic back where it belongs, on stage, not in your wallet.
I think the good ones have been, Houdini spent his entire life debunking psychics because he wanted to believe, he wanted to communicate with his mother, he wanted to find someone who could actually communicate with the dead. And there's a very famous story about him telling Beth, a code word, Beth was his wife, on, hey, when I cross over, go to seances and I will say this word in the seance, you'll know it's me, you'll know it's coming through. And every year at Halloween we do a seance, and every year since he's passed. They do seances every Halloween to try and communicate with Houdini and on his death date and his birth date. And to this day, nobody's ever said the code word, right? It's never come through. And Beth has since passed, and she's actually passed the code word on to a living relative. So it's still out there. It's still completely unknown, but nobody's ever told us. You know, it gets back to, if you could communicate with the dead, there would be no unsolved murder, right? We would all figure it out. It would be pretty obvious who did what. So entertainment is what it's for. It's not for nefarious purposes such as that.
I think part of it could be exposing the fallibility of man. At the end of the day, we all want to be proved wrong. There is a small sense of us. You look at on the CW network, Penn and Teller fool us. Penn and Teller are the masters of their craft. They are some of the... Teller is by far the brightest magic mind that has ever... is currently alive, I would say. Penn is a brilliant writer and a comic. And they've been doing magic together for 50 some odd years. They want to be fooled because they know it all. So if you can show them something that is absolutely remarkable in their own field, that's amazing. Some of my favorite magic to watch is close-up magic because I know how hard it is. And when you can pull it off, and I didn't catch the double lift, or you do the switching of the deck, oh, what an amazing, that sense of full-body Disney wonder that you had when you were a kid that walked in, Mickey! Like, it's amazing.
And Houdini genuinely wanted to believe, genuinely wanted to find that connection. And every time he went to a psychic, he could 100% debunk and say, this is what's going on. I know the techniques that you're using here. I just want to find a real one who can really communicate. Turns out they can't. But that's, on a side note, it's probably because in the afterlife, they don't really care about us here. Your time here is a blink of an eye, if you think about it. If you think about all eternity time, like, it's an immense, you can't even wrap your head around it. And to be here for 100 years is just a blink. So it's more like you're just in this dream that you're going to wake up from very soon. So the afterworld really wouldn't care about what our little dream is about here. It doesn't really matter.
How mentalism is used to influence people in society. The techniques that magicians will use: cold reading, blanket statements that feel personal, but are just pasted over a wide room. Two stories happening at the same time. The idea that what the audience is seeing with the performer and the guest on stage is different than what the performer and the guest on stage are seeing. We see it in politics a lot. We see that sense of dual reality. You can watch the same interview and have two different points of view coming in. Those 2 points of view are completely opposite of each other, yet we watched the exact same event. That idea that the talking is because we have given them credibility and authority, because they're the ones that are on TV and we're not. Sometimes it's what they wear, right? The people that are dressed much nicer, people that are in a suit, oftentimes we go, oh, they're important. We joke, it's like, who has more buttons on their shirt? You're more important. The ability with the credibility, with the authority that we've given them, with the presence that we as an audience have deemed that they have, will immediately influence our decision and our thought process. You can watch a soccer game and watch the same event, the same, penalty kick. But from one team, they will say, they cheated. The other team will go, that was the most amazing thing in the world. That was amazing, record-breaking. But because there's two different sides, and we've given them the authority, same thing happens on stage. When you walk into a theater, to a parlor, to a close-up mat, wherever you're going to, and you're consenting to be in this experience, that person with whom you've bought the ticket for immediately holds higher status and more credibility. So no matter what I tell you, you're more likely to believe it.
Mentalism can be very powerful. How do you protect yourself from influence? How do you know your choices are really yours when someone can plant ideas in your head without you noticing? The truth is, the best manipulation is the kind you never see coming.
Knowing that ultimately where our attention goes is dictated by us. So at no point, I think, has there ever been a moment with which that people are unconsciously or unknowingly brainwashed into something. I think it always has to come from the person. So I don't do hypnosis. I dabbled in it a little bit, but I know of hypnotists. And a very common thing that hypnotists get asked is, well, what if I don't want to be hypnotized? Can you still do it? And the answer is no. It's a two-way street. In the same way, if I were a hypnotist and I were to say, okay, now look at me and now sleep, well, you have to buy into that. You have to be a part of this conversation that's going on between us, in the same way as a magic trick or a mentalism effect. If I were to ask you to think of somebody and you don't, well, I can't just reach into your brain and pull something out of you without your willing consent to do that. So a way around, and that is true of everything, is just paying attention to where your attention goes. So I don't think that it's possible for people to, in a nefarious way, kind of sneak under the radar and whatnot and bring it out into our lives without us first looking or without us first moving forward with it. Ultimately, I think we decide where we want to go, in the same way that if you don't want to be targeted by Instagram ads or be influenced by the things that folks on social media are saying, then just don't look at social media. And then suddenly you are absolved of all of this. You ultimately have the power over this, ultimately. I think it's a sneaky business with which you can bring people to the understanding that ultimately this is a good idea that you found this.
My other job, I'm a professor of communication studies. And what I do in that is I analyze how people are influenced, how we communicate. And part of that looks at psychology. What's happening to psychology when advertisers are trying to influence us one way or the other? By looking at persuasion, I can really see parallels between what I do dramatically in my shows and what marketers do, what advertisers do. And I'm always looking at the messaging behind advertising campaigns, behind political campaigns. And it's amazing to see that they use a lot of the same techniques. They use color symbolism, where certain colors influence us to feel certain things. Certain images, certain logos, certain iconography is trying to make us experience certain things. And they're using the same exact techniques we do. So if you just look at the symbols behind all these things, it's amazing the parallels you can find. In addition to the teaching of communication studies and the mentalism, I combine the two, and I do actual corporate training, where my book is How to Read Minds and Influence People, where I teach companies how they can do this, how they can use the techniques of mentalism, the academic discipline that I teach, and use that to really read their customers, read their clients, figure out what they're truly thinking, and then influence them to make good decisions. So I go into companies and I will do consulting, I will do training, I will teach them to harness these mental powers. And a lot of companies, a lot of organizations, a lot of people do this. What's the purpose? Why are you doing this? We are always trying to influence other people, no matter what we do. If you have kids and you want them to stay in school, not do drugs, get good grades, have good friends, you're trying to influence them. You're trying to read what they are thinking. You're trying to influence them to make good decisions. If you want your friend to quit smoking, that's influence. You're trying to influence them. Public health campaigns are all about influence. So Philip Morris and the Department of Health are doing the same thing. They just have different goals. So there's nothing wrong with trying to influence people. There's nothing wrong with persuasion, with trying to control people, trying to make them make good decisions, as long as what you're ultimately trying to do is positive. We all still have free will. I can't force someone to make good choices or bad choices. I can just try to push them one way or the other.
When used for crime, mentalism becomes the ultimate hustle. Scammers cold read their way into your trust, nudge you with free choice manipulations, or use observation to snag your passwords. It's Ocean's 11 minus the charm and Brad Pitt's snacks.
Just in joking, I get a lot of, hey, let's go to Vegas. Let's, can you give me the lottery numbers? Those kind of things. I personally, my scruples really allow me to do those things. I learned early on in my career, someone came up to me after a show and was genuinely wanted me to help find a lost relative, someone who had gone astray. And it was at that moment in my life, I had this choice to make, whether I'm going to take her down the road of, oh yeah, let me tell you all the things Sylvia Brown would tell you, it's going to be off a path in a wooded area, blah, 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 all these commonalities, and giving her some hope, or being honest and being true to authentic character and saying, I'm sorry, but it's the greatest compliment in the world that you think I'm really doing this for real, but I got to let you know that I can't help you find your lost relative. If people could communicate with the dead, there would be no unsolved murders, right? They would just be like, oh yeah, it was this guy over here, he did it this way, go put him in jail. And I think that's kind of the biggest proof to that. And I think that's where the manipulation can take place and where people can kind of be going down the wrong path.
I was asked on a ship, what are the winning bingo numbers for the jackpot at the end of the cruise? And I thought, I could lie and just make up some numbers and then get it wrong. I could tell them that I'm not actually a psychic and then crush their spirit. I could go into the logistics of, even if I could tell you what the winning numbers are, how on earth are you going to rifle through all of the bingo cards to try and find the right one that may or may not actually exist, and then have to swap with other people? Are you going to buy it off of them? What is your modus operandi here? Well, I could do that. Or I could just keep their illusion alive and go, I'm so sorry. I wish I could tell you. I'm not really feeling 100% today. But I have a strong feeling that whether you win on this cruise or win on another one, you are a fantastic person, and you seem like the kind of person that may not be lucky, but you make your own luck. So regardless what happens here or there, go, you're going to be brilliant. They left feeling better. I didn't lie, and I didn't crush their illusion.
Used for good, mentalism can be pretty awesome. Therapists can use it to understand emotions. Teachers can use it to keep kids interested. Law enforcement can use it to read suspects better. And you could use it to ace that job interview, or finally figure out why your partner's "I'm fine" means anything but.
You can use these things for good or bad. I've done consulting before with medical groups, with doctors, where I would go in and I would teach them how communication works, how mentalism works, and how they can influence people more effectively and read them. Because if someone goes in to see their doctor, they might be shy, they might be nervous, they might not want to show what's really going on. So I was trying to help the doctors figure out, how can you actually read their nonverbal cues? How can you get that empathy for what they're going through? And if you can do that, if you can understand what they're really thinking, you will have a much better diagnosis. You will really get inside their mind and figure out, where does it really hurt? What are they really feeling? And then, how can you influence them? The doctors aren't going to try to influence people to do negative things. They want people to eat healthier, exercise more, take their medicines, follow the course of treatment, make better health decisions. So I try to help them learn how to help their patients make good decisions. If you can influence them not to choose a card, not to do something in a show, which is fun, I enjoy it, it's my life, but how can you make them take their medicine? How can you make them eat healthier? How can you actually make them do things that will improve their lives? So there can be a lot of actual real world examples of how this can really help people.
I made it a point to use mentalism and magic for good instead of for bad. I try and provide a positive message. When I do magic, and this is how I judge how good of a show I had. If I end up sitting around talking with someone after the show for 30 plus minutes, it has nothing to do with magic but the message that I told them, then I know it was a good show. And most commonly, they're not talking about the magic I did. Magic becomes a tool for my storytelling. I'm giving a touching message with the story, and then to get it and push it over, I use a magic trick to amplify the story, amplify the message or the feeling. Then you go home, man, like I had someone come up to me and I did a simple cut and restored rope, but I did it with a story. And this lady's like, I was on the verge of tears while you're telling this story. My whole premise of mentalism and magic that I do and portray to people is about coming together. showing that everyone's different, comes from different lives, different paths. I even bring up the possibility, the thought of like string theory. I don't know much about it, but it's kind of a funny joke, but it's relevant. Everyone's on their own life lane, their own path, right? No two paths are the same, but we come together. So we start balling up these strings. You come together from work, from relationships, from common interests. You come together. We ball up a little string. And then you come together in front of my table with magic, because I'm here showing you guys something. And for a split second, or even for a few moments while you sit at this table, we're all gonna have the same thought and idea. We're all gonna be on the same wavelength, the same energy, the same timeline, because you're all gonna see the same thing right now. And as all those strings come together for that one moment, we unravel and now we're all linked on the same time. But I bring on this message of we can transfer energy to each other. My whole premise in life is being the light for people that are stuck in that darkness. So I use my magic to exude or be that light or amplify that light for other people.
You know, the positive ways are entertainment. You know, the positive ways and really giving someone higher self-esteem, more confidence in their ability, allowing them to trust their brain, trust who they are, to give them the right answer. That's the positive side of it for sure. The manipulation side of it, the other side of it is, you know, the people who are taking people's money and trying to tell them about their long lost relatives, or trying to communicate with the dead, trying to communicate, you know, these seances. That the ones for entertainment are great. I love to be scared. I love to have that. But the ones that are really genuinely trying to communicate with the dead are just, and taking money for it, to me is not ethical at all. And I think that's the biggest thing that's still going on in society today, is that you can go see people who claim to be legitimate psychics, and they will try and take your money and remove spells for you and cast love spells and do all this stuff that's just, it's phony baloney. But the interesting thing is your subconscious mind is so powerful that if somebody tells you something, you're going to believe it, and that belief is going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. So at the end of the day, yeah, you felt more confident because you believe that this spell that they put on you and these beads and this potion that they gave you did it, when it's really just that placebo effect. You know, it's all in your mind.
Mentalism feels like magic because it's wrapped in a big old box of mystery, but it's just science. Psychology, really. Mentalists use tricks like priming and suggestion to decode your body language and speech. It's like a mental tango, and you're being led, whether you realize it or not.
Nobody can actually read minds, to my knowledge. To my knowledge. Now, granted, my knowledge is limited of every human being on this earth. But through tests and proof and, I mean, Project Alpha tried to do a lot of stuff with this. Now there are people, I will say this because I have friends that will mention this, that like will become very sensitive to energies that walk into the room, and will be cognizant of different auras and whatnot that they may be experiencing. But to my knowledge, and to the greater magic community, the ability to actually reach out and reach into somebody's head and pluck out a thought does not exist. So, what do we do then? I either have to give you an idea and make you think it's your own and then retell it to you. I have to somehow gather information from you in a secret and discreet way, or I should have to lie to the audience.
Mentalism only works when you work it. Mentalism works when the mentalist Sherlock Holmes level observations meet your willingness to play along. They read your body language, pick up on micro expressions, and use psychological tricks to make you think they're reading your mind. Pro tip, don't overshare. The less you give, the harder it is for them to pull a mind-bending rabbit out of their metaphorical hat.
I think it's one of two ways. Either there's a delightful, willing suspension of disbelief. Like, of the people that do come to magic shows, it typically falls into different categories, one of which being, I just like seeing it. I don't want to know how it's done. I just want to experience what this creation is and just be delighted and joy in the not knowing. Someone who's capable of living within their curiosity. I think in the modern age, curiosity has become a sin. to where we have all this technology and this information immediately available to us. So to say I don't know something or I don't understand something, well, how could you not? We have all of this. We have all of the information in front of us. But natural curiosity and a natural not knowing is the impetus for all human discovery. It's how we got here, is we were curious about the stars and the moon and the tides and everything. And that's what led us to understand about it. And I think that's what magic calls upon, is a natural curiosity. So that's one camp of people that come to just enjoy and just be entertained. There's another camp that people who want to understand what's going on. I'm one of them. If you ask any magician, we got into magic because we wanted to know how it worked. So we share that same DNA with them. And it's a natural curiosity. They want to understand what's going on. There's a very rare kind of third group that I find to where people almost get angry with magic. And for a long time, I didn't fully understand that until it clicked to me a couple of years ago, to where some people will view magic as an insult to their intelligence. As it's something that is, if I'm not given all of the information, or we can't see beyond the notion of it being a trick, that you are withholding a bit of information from me, and as such, I just don't like it. I view it as, like I say, an insult to their intelligence, which I think that we're only seeing the surface area of what magic can be. And in many cases, it's our own fault as magicians. Over the years, there's certainly been a lot of people, and in many cases, it's such a rare art form that when someone comes to say my show, oftentimes I'm the first mentalist or magician they've ever seen in person. For most people, I've seen a clip on YouTube, or I once saw a trick on TV, but I've never had someone do it to me live. I always just thought it was a camera trick. So there's already that going on. So having that kind of responsibility, I think a lot of magicians have done a bit of disservice in that their persona or their view of the art form doesn't go beyond gotcha, which we have so much more depth to go with it beyond, well, it was in this hand, nope, it was over here, you didn't see it, ha ha ha. We can go farther than that. So I think in this third group of people that don't like magic, I think a lot of it comes from seeing a performer that was not going about it from a nefarious or a morally, look how great and clever I am. Oftentimes in the shows that I do, and what audiences will come and say to me afterwards is, for a long time you operate as a magician of this kind of magician guilt of, I'm doing something sneaky and I really hope no one caught it. Of I put it in the other hand, I did some kind of sneaky sleight of hand move, and I really hope I practiced enough that no one saw me put it in my sleeve, or no one saw me sneak it under this other thing, to where we're operating with that in our head. And the more you do that and have the evolution of an effect, you start to kind of not be, your mind isn't there anymore. You understand semantically what you need to do. There's the inner reality of an effect, and then the outer reality of an effect. The inner reality is the machinations of what you're doing. Once you get beyond that and you get into the outer reality of it, you're experiencing it with your spectators. And I think that's where a lot of power and a lot of mastery comes from, to where you're just as involved in this as so much.
Mentalists can mess up too. Sometimes they misread your body language or take a guess that's just off base. The better ones recover from these mistakes with humor or quick thinking, turning a oops into aha. Even their mistakes remind us that humans are unpredictable, and that's kind of beautiful.
Have I gotten stuff wrong on stage? Absolutely. A lot of times people think that mentalism is just, you're thinking of a name, Todd. It could be, I've got a box of crayons, and I need you to color this house. Color the door, then color the roof, now color the chimney, whatever it is. And then I have a prediction, or I have a miniature house in a box that's colored and painted the same way. That's also mentalism. It's not just I'm reaching in your head. It might be an impossible prediction. There might be a box hanging above the stage the entire show, or an envelope, or some sort of vessel that comes down, and inside is a recap of impossible things that there's no way I could have known. In a couple of my more mentalism heavy acts, I get it wrong on purpose to show the fallibility of it. Because if it worked every single time, sure, why not? Doing magic for little kids is wicked hard. Because when you go, look, here's a coin, it's gone. They go, well, yeah, I saw Mickey Mouse do that last week on the TV. He can make things disappear. It's amazing. And you're like, well, all right. You show it to an adult and they go, there's something sneaky going on there. You're doing something that you shouldn't be able to do. And when you have that in a mentalism routine, if it's like, well, yeah, of course you can just read minds, you've lost the entertainment.
Definitely, it's a willing audience type of thing, and they need to be entertained. So any place that, like, you go where you're going to see a magic show, where you're coming to be entertained, those are always the best audiences. I think magicians have a really bad rap because everybody has an uncle that does some terrible card tricks, and nobody really wants to see these long, drawn out plots that would you just get to the amazing part, right? So there are great places to do mentalism as long as the audience knows that's what's going on. That's what we're doing. Walk around. I do a lot of corporate work. I do a lot of trade shows. I do a lot of work where these people might have been in meetings all day long, and at the very end of the day after dinner, they're going to have a 1-hour show. And that's me. The corporate mentalist comes out, and they're like, oh my God, I just want to go home. I just need to get out of here. Why? Another hour? And it's getting them to relax. And that first 10 minutes is showing them that you're going to have fun here. This is going to be something entertaining that you're actually going to enjoy. So I think it's more on the mentalist to make sure that you're providing that experience for people. But there's definitely tougher situations. You know, I've done a lot of bar shows in my early career, and a lot of comedy shows where there's a couple comedians up, and now it's a mentalist, and those audience are there for entertainment. So you better entertain them, and you better do it quickly and on par, and be able to relate to them very quickly. Otherwise, you'll lose them, and there's nothing worse than having people looking at their phone or not interested in what you're doing. I mean, I'm a middle child. Remember, I need the attention. I need them to be feeding me back. And so, yeah, the better places are places where people are paying to see you. It's a permission-based art form.
Mentalism's principles are like life hacks on steroids. Want to communicate better? Watch for subtle cues. Want to ace that meeting? Prime your audience. It's not about tricking them. It's about making connections and maybe being a little cooler at parties.
I do it for a living, so I'm always thinking about it, but sometimes when it happens to me, I'm completely desensitized to it. It's kind of that exposure, therapy in a way. There are techniques that mentalists will use to try and kind of catch you out or catch you off guard, like a laugh or a joke or a really sincere moment, and this is going to sound bizarre, but I've seen things used in like therapy, counseling, where if I'm on stage, and I'll make the parallel here. If I'm on stage and I know that 3 cards have been selected, I might know what the 3 cards are, but I don't know who has what card. And I walk over to you and I say, don't say anything, but I'm getting that you had a high card. A high card. Right, so now I'm looking for you to subconsciously either affirm or deny that claim. And sometimes it's as easy as you had a high card, and they just go, or they're thinking, oh, is 7 a high card? Okay, great, boom, I already know, you don't have the king. Moving on. Go right down the line. I've seen it used in therapy where certain counselors and therapists and doctors will be able to go, hey, are you having a tough time at X, Y, and Z? And you'll see the patient or the person kind of go, well, it's like, boom, yeah, I can tell that you're in. So you can use those same techniques in other applications where the difference is on stage, I'm trying to make sure that you don't know that I saw that. So yeah, I mean, I've seen it used in both positive and negative ways, but also a lot of the techniques that I will use on stage are impractical to use. Yeah, it's outside of the world of doing a show.
I think mentalism is starting to see a massive upswing in popularity. Magic, mentalism, all of these things tend to go up and down in terms of popularity and things, but I think mentalism is certainly becoming more commonplace in the global attention. 10, 20 years ago, if you were to say, oh, I'm a mentalist, people would look at you and go, what the heck does that mean? And maybe even still a little bit today, but most cases people have a general understanding as to what that means and what this art form is, which is lovely. And it's a beautiful art form that has seen through all of history and really existed all throughout time, that I think people are starting to become more acquainted with. And it's really a beautiful thing. And as mentalism proceeds forward, if you were to ask a lot of other performers, there seems to be a little bit of a hesitance to it with the advent of new technologies. Any sufficient technology is indistinguishable from magic, truly. I mean, if you took a radio 100 years ago, or 200 years ago, or whatever the case may be, things that we see as commonplace now, we carry around little rectangles in our pockets that connect us to everything in the world. That's truly miraculous and really a miracle when you break it down and think about it. So how do you distinguish that from genuine mystery and magic? As things progress, and now we have things like AI, and we have things like just all of these wonderful advancements in technology, cameras that are this big. So it's really remarkable the things that we've done. So how do you combat that and still preserve mystery? My philosophy of that is to go backwards, to where nowadays the kinds of things that I do in my show either don't involve props whatsoever or involve things that are commonplace and things that are disposable. So things like golf pencils and little bits of paper, or a deck of playing cards, or things like this, to where they're familiar objects to people, but also they are devoid of technological intervention.
The future of mentalism is basically a sci-fi movie. Picture AI, virtual reality, and neuroscience teaming up with traditional techniques, performances with biometric sensors, mind-reading AI. It's Mentalism 2.0, proving that the mind will always be the ultimate frontier.
That I think is the beautiful thing about mind reading and about thought reading. We all want to be understood at the end of the day. And I think that's something that mentalism delivers very, very well, is to look at someone and to be fully understood, I think is a wonderful thing. Mentalism is really empathy personified at the end of the day. So I'm excited to see where my own career goes and the trajectory of it, but also the public opinion and the public acceptance of this almost forgotten art form that I'm glad to see is making a very swift and well-deserved comeback.
Why people do it today? It's to make money. Plain and simple. And I've seen some incredible things happen on live TV. I've seen some things that it's like, oh, you vanished the Statue of Liberty. Neat. Okay. Right? Like, it's amazing. And then you go, all right, what's next?